Assalamu alaikum and welcome everyone. My name is Anika Munshi. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and today I'll talk to you all about recovering from emotionally immature Muslim parents. As a counselor, I work primarily with Muslims, and over the years I've started seeing the same patterns over and over again. Most of the people I work with have been raised in difficult environments that were emotionally scarce and ultimately shaped their identity. And now in therapy, these adult children are peeling the layers of truth and deconstructing both their religious identity and collective human identity to understand who they truly are. And ultimately, they're on a path to become the best versions of themselves. To me, our mental health, our worldview, is shaped by our culture, our religious understanding, our socio-political environment, and most importantly, our upbringing. Which is why I believe when working with Muslims, we need to take in this contextual view instead of pathologizing Muslims based on their immediate thoughts and feelings. And unfortunately, when a Muslim counselor themselves isn't aware of their own heritage, legacy traumas, and role in their own family, they're ill-equipped and unable to reach a space that encourages Muslims towards a deeper and higher truth. Before I begin, I want you all to keep in mind that this presentation is specifically tailored towards Muslim adult children. There are plenty of talks in our Muslim communities that cater to supporting the parents' reality and pushes their narratives. However, today's talk will speak from the adult children's perspective. And listen, we're not here to blame others. We're here to help everyone see that problems are intergenerational, cyclical. It's my hope that by the end, you can walk away with some clarity and an intention to connect with yourselves with compassion. So let's begin. Okay, so today we're going to unpack some complex and crucial dynamics within our families. We'll be diving into concepts like emotional immaturity, enmeshment, self-abandonment, and what I like to call blurry personalities. Like I said, we're not trying to assign blame. We're here to call everyone to something higher, to foster a greater awareness, to identify healthier relationships, and to deepen our connection with Allah. The Quran reminds us in Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 11, "Indeed, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves." Remember, this journey of understanding starts with us individually. Change is possible, even when the problem is deeply rooted. As a therapist, I know that even a person's identity or personality can be changed if and only if a person is committed and willing. Let's start by understanding what we mean by emotionally immature parents. Often these are the parents who will emphasize to us how much they've sacrificed. And they indeed did provide physical and financial support, but they often did so for their own survival and to serve their own personal interests. For example, they wanted us to be their trophy children so that we could make them look good. Or they wanted us to be financially capable so that one day we would become their retirement plan. Or they wanted us to be empathetic and obedient so that we could become their permanent emotional caretakers. When the adult children suggest this narrative, or even mildly suggest that these parents inadequately met their emotional needs, they deny, become defensive, and suggest that it's the children who are selfish and ungrateful for wanting more. Adult children have learned that their reality can't exist until it's acknowledged in the eyes of their parents. Children are developmentally incapable of meeting their own emotional needs, and so they learn to survive by comforting their parents. Where a parent is supposed to meet their child's emotional needs, in these relationships, the roles are reversed. Growing up, we had to be our parents' permanent therapist or learn to shapeshift to mold ourselves into the version that would be best seen, heard, and approved of. We knew if we didn't do this, we would risk abandonment and rejection, and we're too helpless as children to caretake ourselves. Not only did these parents guilt and shame us and push us into these fixed roles, they also used religion by enforcing a very simplistic definition of obedience. From a young age, they would drill into us that children must follow whatever their parents say, and that children are inherently bad unless their parents straighten them out. And in doing so, we were made to adopt their version of reality as the only truth, and only then were we considered good children. The core issue here is that emotionally immature parents often fail to see their children as their own separate individuals. Instead, they view us as an extension of themselves, almost like a clone or a puppet, whose primary role is to help them avoid any kind of emotional discomfort. The child is supposed to be so obedient and not cause any emotional discomfort to the parent. Their job is to make it seem like whatever the parent does is good, and whenever they fall short, it's a deficiency in the child. At their core, these parents are deeply unstable and fragile. Many of them were deprived in the same ways by their own parents. And honestly, it's a challenging cycle because they raise their children to fail. If only they could see the generational patterns and the ripple effects that their own unaddressed needs have on those around them for generations. Let me ask you all to reflect for a moment. What's something you grew up with doing as a means for survival that you've chosen to no longer do in your adult life? I'll tell you, for me, it was learning to not play therapist for my own mother. I felt that in order to be seen, I had to be useful, and if I could just make my depressed mother happy, then I could have the safety and love that I always needed. But I ultimately had to accept that my mother is a grown woman who can make her own choices. If she wanted to continue the pattern of chaos and pain, then she could. But I'll make the decision that's best for me, even if it causes her discomfort. Because discomfort is necessary for her to see herself and for her to grow. Take a moment to pause the video and reflect on this for yourself. Culturally, we're raised to have an almost godlike reverence for our parents, and Islam teaches us the paramount importance of honoring and being dutiful to them. But for those of us who grew up with emotionally immature parents, it becomes incredibly difficult to reconcile that care and duty, especially when it jeopardizes our own well-being. We're often pushed past our limits and then made to feel guilt and shame if we don't take on those specific fixed roles that basically hide our parents' deficiencies. Understand that doing this isn't our spiritual duty. Ihsan doesn't mean acting beyond our capacity and reparenting them. It means first reparenting ourselves and then acting within our capacity. And when we don't do this, honestly, we're lying to ourselves. And this becomes an exercise of self-deception and a form of hypocrisy. We end up shape-shifting our identities and self-sacrificing to please them, not Allah. Remember, it says in Surah An-Nisa verse 135, O believers, stand firm for justice as witnesses for Allah, even if it is against yourselves, your parents, or close relatives. Don't let your desires cause you to deviate from justice. And Allah is aware of all of what you do. This is a clear reminder that as Muslims, we worship the truth, and anyone that deviates from it is to be disobeyed. Oftentimes, people tell me that as long as parents don't tell me to drink or commit zina or something overtly wrong, then we should obey. But this powerful verse makes it clear that regardless of major or minor sin, we are responsible for upholding justice as it applies to both parents and their children. Yes, we can honor them from a place of profound gratitude and care, but it's meant to be a relationship that fosters righteousness for all involved, not one that demands the complete diminishment of children. This is a crucial distinction we need to make for our own spiritual and emotional health. Let's talk about the meaning of enmeshment. If you're struggling to set boundaries with your parents, this is a strong indicator that you learned early on that to be good, you must always do what others say and ensure that they feel good. And if you don't, it must mean that you're bad or wrong. The more you agree, the more you're seen as good and are favored and provided positive reinforcement to do this again. This is the essence of enmeshment. We're taught to see the world in black and white, in a way that's entirely through the lens of other people, particularly authority figures. while completely neglecting our own internal compass. It's like how we're told history from the perspectives of the colonizer and not the colonized. In unhealthy relationships, enmeshment becomes the literal definition of closeness. Differentiating yourself or setting a boundary means you're abandoning the relationship entirely. It's an unspoken rule. Either you agree with how the authorities think and feel, or you face the terrifying prospect of being alone without something to anchor your reality. It's also important to realize that being obedient doesn't always guarantee favor by the parents. Often, those children who are the most obedient were actually scapegoated. The parent despises their early ability to reach perfection. Maybe this reflects their own self hatred or mirrors the way their own parents viewed them as children. Either way, these children please and obey at the cost of themselves. The authoritarian cultures many of our parents were raised in often reinforce the idea that the truth belongs solely to authority figures, parents, elders, and religious leaders, rather than to universal abstract values and principles that are God given. Every single time we give in to their version of truth, we lose a part of ourselves. We grow up with a blurry, undefined sense of purpose. We're essentially taught that to be loved and accepted, we must please, perform, and constantly shapeshift. This so-called connection distorts reality for everyone. We see things from a one-dimensional parent's perspective instead of multidimensional. And this pulls us further and further away from our authentic selves and away from a higher, more dynamic version of truth. Don't these parents see that being good doesn't mean following in the footsteps of our forefathers and copy-pasting their context and their problems? This isn't the meaning of honoring our parents. This isn't genuine love. Rather, it's our parents' way of healing their own childhood wounds, of not being seen and molding us into their early attachment figures. For adult children, it isn't a genuine love and dutifulness for parents. It's a form of self-abandonment disguised as affection. It's our own need for safety and connection. And this immature understanding of closeness makes its way into all of our relationships, even our relationship with Allah. Healthy relationships require that we see each other's differences, accepting that we are similar in some ways and unique in others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid out a higher form of connection in the Quran, in the oft-recited verse of Surah Al-Hujurat. O humanity, we have created you from a male and female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another. It is in this verse we understand that connection is at its pinnacle based on acceptance of differences. Embracing each other's opposing energies and qualities is a necessary reflection for ourselves. It's an alarming statistic that Muslims who are raised in these very harsh environments end up leaving Islam entirely when they become adults. Some of them may have healed with time and space or healed after becoming estranged from their parents, but the deepest part of them remains unhealed. Know that when we abandon God, we are abandoning the multidimensional truth. It's like saying, yeah, my emotionally immature parents were right. Giving into selfish pleasures and avoiding any pain or discomfort is the meaning of life, and I should just do the same. But when we abandon God, we disconnect from a far greater understanding of this world. We fail to see that the truth didn't entirely belong to our parents or our culture, or even a certain interpretation of religion. Our parents, just like us, are products of their own circumstances. We have to courageously look beyond the specific context that shape their understanding and live in a way that works within our context. We can notice the universal patterns and principles that shape truth and embody that within us, giving us a greater contentment in what we do. So really, this spiritual journey back to God is really a journey back to our most authentic, purposeful selves. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hashr, and don't be like those who forgot Allah, so He made them forget themselves. Those are the defiantly disobedient. This verse powerfully links forgetting God with forgetting who we truly are. We need to embrace our identity, both as Muslims and collectively as humans. Think about a loyalty that demands abandoning individual thought for another's truth. We're seeing this both in our corrupt government, our corrupt masjid systems, as well as corrupt family systems. This kind of cultural loyalty says that upholding the truth of the powerful people guarantees safety and certain privileges. These are the people who recognize their own needs but believe they need to offer loyalty and work within the system. But know that the more we align to them, the more disconnected we become from ourselves, the more we might justify our actions by saying something like, as long as I benefit, why bother making certain changes? But a Muslim's version of truth is vastly different. It seeks to benefit both ourselves and the greater good. Without God, we give in to our own selfish desires and give up a greater, more meaningful purpose. And without anchoring ourselves in true purpose, we exchange a deeper, lasting contentment and genuine connectedness to others for some fleeting, superficial feelings of happiness. It's a trade-off that ultimately leaves us empty. Okay, so now let's talk about what happens to children who successfully shapeshift at their core and become dysfunctionally obedient to their parents. These are the people who have what I call blurry personalities. This is someone who learned from a very young age that to get their fundamental needs met, the need for love, safety, or belonging, they had to please and perform for others. To be good was to be useful and perfectly match others' expectations. These are society's best people pleasers, chameleons, or as I like to call them, shapeshifters. They learned either subtly or explicitly that people didn't really care about who they were, but only about their performance and how well they met others' expectations. They were rarely asked what they liked, what they wanted, or how they truly felt. And tragically, they grew up and forgot who they were. They only recognize it when their choices don't match their feelings and feel bad for having these feelings at all. They come to therapists like myself asking, how do I cope with these feelings? But I know very well that there's a greater truth to be sought here. When they don't seek meaningful self-reflection, these are the adult children who expect their friends or partner to sit with them for hours and do the work of mind-reading who they are and tell them what to do, because they feel guilty for choosing themselves. To them, owning their own thoughts or feelings is a scary thing. So either they'll shame and suppress these feelings, or they'll assign them to others by projecting their feelings onto them. In Muslim authoritarian patriarchal societies, although the boy has the same struggles as the girl in terms of developing their own identity, it's the woman who tends to struggle more than the man because of prevailing gender norms. In this system, a woman is only thought to be attractive when she's easily moldable, goes with the flow, successfully annihilates herself, and merges into the reality of her husband or in-laws, and uses her energy and capacity to be useful to and meet the needs of everyone except herself. Often it's the husband who also is selfless, and when he marries, he expects his wife to also merge into his parents' reality because it's safe. However, I'll focus here on the phenomenon of the selfless woman because it's so prevalent in our Muslim communities and it's also the most damaging. For a good Muslim woman, being selfless quite literally here means not having a self, in order for her to be seen as good enough by her parents, partner, in-laws, and society at large. As men like to say, this is a woman's place, as the inferior species who must survive by accommodating others. If these women are constantly available to everyone and shapeshift into the necessary roles as needed by their environment, only then will they be liked, and at the very least, be safe. The man here gets to escape this as a husband by outsourcing his role and oftentimes his responsibilities to his wife and his children. However, for women, it becomes a really big problem when they grow older and have to deal with years of self-abandonment, all while their own children in today's generation are allowed to some degree to rebel and express their individuality. What seemed easy when they were little girls has now become so burdensome with the responsibilities of being a wife, a mother, and a daughter in law. The tension inside them becomes too much to bear, and so to cope and to find some healing, they resort to controlling others as they have learned from the men around them, desperately trying to meet their emotional needs and attain some kind of inner peace. Honestly, it's a sad state of affairs. Marriage for women has become about benefiting the men and manipulating them to give women what they need. And many young women see this and don't want to get married because it just seems like they'll have to do all the work, all while not gaining much in return. Women have learned to meet many of their own needs by becoming financially capable, while men still refuse to caretake themselves, thinking that it's feminine and inferior. These men also refuse to bring Islam into modern times because it doesn't benefit them. And so, honestly, as a community, we're at a standstill, waiting for more people to see the truth and collectively move us forward. It's important to mention that many mothers who live this way believe that in order to protect their daughters, they have to pass this so called wisdom onto them early because they know what fate is awaiting them in their future marriages. They discourage their daughters at a young age from having any sense of self and expect them to curate an image that'll attract a good man because otherwise they won't get married. And for them, marriage is the ultimate source of safety and status in others' eyes. But if they're really honest with themselves, it's ironically also the greatest source of pain for them. And many of them secretly wish that they could be free and live a different life. But out of the fear of what others would say, they keep up appearances. Instead of teaching their daughters how to uphold truth and cultivate inner strength so that they can learn to do the right thing in difficult situations, they instead teach them to be manipulative or cunning. And many do. But when a daughter refuses to do all that work just to meet her basic needs, the mother struggles to connect with that daughter because she highlights the cracks in the system, so to speak, offering a new way of doing things. These are the daughters who are more authentic, purpose driven, and who dare to set boundaries, and are also, unfortunately, villainized by their families and by society. These women prefer stepping into the unknown because it's better than the oppressive past, and because they see that the healthier that they become, the more others view them as radically feminist and as defying tradition. As for those mothers, the only way that they can survive in old age is to bank on guilt tripping those blurry children or sons and daughter in laws so that they can mold them into their own liking. And then the cycle repeats. But it doesn't have to, because what we're learning here is that having a self is absolutely necessary, even in our collectivistic systems. Because when we do, we can benefit the system based on our unique strengths and capacity. When we're rooted in our own specific needs and our own truth, only then can we be authentically and purposely be helpful to others for the sake of Allah. Otherwise, we're just playing good girl or good boy to our childish benefit. Alhamdulillah, I've had the privilege of helping so many women come out of this fog and into a level of depth and clarity within themselves. This journey of self-discovery is possible for everyone. It strengthens our connection to ourselves and to our families in a healthier way. And most importantly, we gain a meaningful connection with Allah. Remember, growth is a continuous process. It's not a station that we arrive at and then forget. We aren't healed simply by going to therapy. We are constantly going through cycles and seeing a new reality each time. Our identity is meant to be constructed, then deconstructed, and then reconstructed in a never-ending cycle that carries itself into the next generation. Just like how when the Earth goes around the sun every year, it's in a different place in the universe because our solar system is constantly in motion around our galaxy, which is also moving, and our universe itself is expanding. Although we're all part of systems, we must continue to move within those systems and produce change that will benefit us and the generations to come. Ultimately, we need to accept that we are beings of change, and by solidifying the truth, we benefit ourselves temporarily. But when we understand that truth is relative and dynamic, then we can become agents of change, and we become more observant and patient. It's as the Quran reminds us, indeed, Allah is with the patient. So be patient with yourselves, and be patient on this path of healing, insha'Allah. We're at the end of this presentation. I hope that you all benefited. Inshallah, you can continue to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Sukoon Counseling. Every few months, I'll be releasing videos about a certain topic, and then I'll be hosting a free online workshop just like this one. The next series will be about marriage, so please do tune in, like, and share. Jazakumullahu khairan, assalamu alaikum, and see you all next time.